conflict. There's a cough.
Sorry.
You okay? This will all be edited out.
Please mute.
Doing better?
I snotted on my shirt.
Disgusting. Sorry about that. We will clean that up as best as possible. Melissa's having a coughing spat over here. It's been a long, rough last couple of days.
Yeah.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to New World Old Soul. Thank you once again for being here. Before jumping into today's episode, we want to ask that you consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and also hitting the notification bell. With all that out of the way, let me welcome in my oddly shaped, somewhat oblong, and slightly under the weather wife, Melissa. How you feeling, Mama?
Well, I'm on day 4 of the flu, so.
Day 4 of the flu, and you're about halfway through pregnancy. How's that been going?
It's been going well till I caught the flu. So I was doing pretty good.
We have been under the weather as a family, slightly. Melissa more so than me. Half of us. Kira and I somehow managed to avoid whatever illness it is that you guys picked up.
Yeah, I don't know how. So we went to the ultrasound, and about a day and a half later, I know it was from over there because at least that outing, we also went out to eat.
Can't leave our bubble. About
a day and a half later, we all, Eli, Kaimani, and I all got sick at the same time, like all of a sudden. And Nevaeh, we were like, man, we feel something itchy in our throat. And Kaimani's like, I feel like I have fuzz in my throat. And we thought like maybe it was just the air or a candle burning or something. And the next day, everybody woke up with intense fevers.
And that next day was Thanksgiving, unfortunately, for our family.
I wanted to just get in bed and put the blanket over my head and not see any light because I had a migraine and everything. But your dad was visiting, and it was like you and Kira weren't sick. So I was like, nope, it's time to put Thanksgiving together. So
if we end up having a bunch of random sneezing and coughing on this episode, apologies ahead of time. There are going to be some audio drops here in the edit. But it made for a very interesting Thanksgiving. Hopefully all of you out there had a good Thanksgiving.
A better
yourselves.
Thanksgiving than we had.
Yeah. No illnesses out there for any of you. Over our Thanksgiving holiday, we had some interesting discussions, as oftentimes seems to be the case when sharing in a holiday. We were discussing the upcoming year, what it is that we want to do for ourselves here as far as expanding upon the infrastructure that we've already built for ourselves on our property. And that led to an interesting discussion about just preparations, especially given so much of the turmoil that it seems to be happening around the world with the escalating tensions over in the Ukraine.
The escalating tensions.
Is that what I said? Yeah, escalating tensions.
Escalating tensions. Over that sounds kind of nice.
Over in the Ukraine, there have been some veiled threats that have been flung about by both Zelensky and Putin, which had us just talking about being as prepared as we possibly can be. If you're a regular viewer of Good Simple Living or us here over in New World Old Soul, you know that we like to be as prepared as we possibly can be. We have kind of a homesteading background, and we want to dive and jump back into that and really fortify the measures that we've taken thus far as trying to keep ourselves as safe and prepared as possible.
Yeah, I know. It's very frustrating when you're trying to have some kind of security around your family, and then there's all of these things bubbling and moving throughout the world that are so outside of your control. So all you can really do is control the way that you respond and the things that you can do within your own home. It's like get your home in order. And I think this is a really good reminder. I mean, COVID happened. We all saw how quickly gas prices skyrocket, how quickly grocery store shelves empty. Anyone over in North Carolina experienced just how quickly a shelf can empty. And I think it's even worse now. It used to take a couple days for the stores to empty. And now since COVID, with this younger, like go get 'em kind of generation, they're like, no, we're getting out there. I think if something major were to happen, stores would be emptied in half a day.
Yeah, very fragile society that we live in here. And given, like I said, some of the veiled threats that are being floated out there by the leaders of the Ukraine and Russia, including an attack here on our home soil using nuclear arms, which is a terrifying thought, because these bombs that they're threatening to use now are nothing like what it is we saw back in the 40s with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're talking about end of times obliteration type of arms.
But it's kind of crazy because nobody really seems to be talking about it. Like you'll see it on CNN or on Fox or something as like a casual story.
Yeah, in the covering of current events. We've never been closer to this kind of nuclear threat, at least in our lifetime,
maybe,
for sure.
Yeah, maybe during the Cold War. But the thing during the Cold War is they were doing all of those drills in school. It was all over the radio and the news. Everyone was talking about it. And now we're literally just as close with the threats and everything. I mean, during the Cold War, we literally came within 5 minutes because there was a weird miscommunication on a submarine.
Which is crazy to dive into.
Yeah, that's nuts. So we were like...
We were one person away.
Mm-hmm. And it was based on a miscommunication.
Yeah.
And somebody stepping in and going, wait, maybe we didn't hear that right.
So that was the bigger part of our discussion over the Thanksgiving holiday. It was the fact that we seem to be on the brink and nobody really seems to care.
It's weird.
It is weird.
I'm like I turn on the TV, like this should be breaking news and nothing.
What do you think about that? Why do you think that is? And do you think that we have, we don't like to live in fear.
Right.
We don't like to operate based in, this fearful mindset. But this should be concerning, should it not?
I'm concerned about it. And I like to live in a state of truth and awareness.
Reality.
I don't like to be kept in the dark. I don't want to be blissfully naive until I see a red glow in the sky from the distance as Seattle sizzles.
It's beyond just a metropolitan area, though. I saw a video on YouTube. Again, this is YouTube, so take it for what it's worth. But they were drawing comparisons between the bombs that were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the 40s and the types of weaponry that are potentially, maybe, possibly going to be used now. We're talking about bombs that are capable of taking out continental shelves. Yeah. So I don't think it would matter whether or not there's a specific metropolitan area that is targeted. Again, we're talking about obliteration here.
Why did human beings do this? Why did we build something like that? Why did anybody in the world build something like that? Were they ever intended to actually be used, or is just their mere existence supposed to deter other countries?
That's the theory, right? But yeah, nobody wins. If somebody drops one of these bombs, nobody wins.
For the globe.
We all lose.
So I guess that gives me an odd sense of peace in that nobody's going to do that. China wants to exist. Russia wants to exist. They don't want to annihilate themselves.
North Korea, Iran, name it.
Yeah, everybody wants to live, and they know that firing something like that would be it. So, I guess there's a little bit of peace in nobody actually wants to make that decision and do that.
We're not trying to take sides here, and we're not going to come in here and pretend to be, historians or experts on exactly what it is as far as the conflict goes between Russia and Ukraine. But like I said, when you hear the types of statements that are being made with people who are in charge of launching such weaponry, it should at the very least be concerning. I'm absolutely astounded and I'm in a total state of disbelief with the fact that this is playing out in the media, but in the social media world. And if you just talk to your everyday American, number one, I don't think any of us are really all that well versed on exactly what it is that's occurring there. And number two, we all just seem to be blissfully oblivious to the fact that this could be it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Well, and then also all of this really fired up after the election. So we're seeing U.S. provided long-range precision missiles fired into Russia from the Ukraine. So we gave them these missiles, but what a lot of people don't understand is the Ukraine actually had no permission to use the missiles.
They had limited permission.
Yeah, or ability to make them precision missiles. They couldn't actually guide the missiles without the help of either the U.S. or NATO or a NATO country,
Correct.
Germany,
as far
France.
as I understand, yes, accurate.
Right. So the fact that they did use precision missiles and hit targets inside Russia means that the U.S. was directly involved with not only providing them, but also guiding them. Now, if you're Russia, how is that not a direct act of war from the U.S.? Despite
that, it's still being placed in this context of it being a proxy war on our part.
We're having we weren't there.
Indirect involvement. I thought Tucker Carlson on his podcast did an excellent job of drawing a comparison of, let's say hypothetically, that Russia is providing Mexico suddenly with weaponry and that those weapons are subsequently being fired into the United States.
By Mexicans, but guided by Russia.
Right. How is it that we would respond as a country, and how is it that we would feel as just, your citizens of that country? I don't think it'd be very favorable or friendly.
Right.
And again, not trying to take sides here or be apologetic on behalf of Putin or the Russians, because again, I'm just your normal, average, everyday American.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me.
Right. You have to kind of put yourself in that position of what does he do and how should he respond, because he is the leader of Russia and he has a lot of pressure on him to be very strong. If he appears weak, he's going to be overthrown.
And protect your people and your country. Yep. Absolutely.
And Russia has a very complicated relationship with NATO. and the EU. I mean, this started back in the original World War. So, like, tiny little bit of history that I know is during World War I, World War II, Russia was invaded by Germany. And then like tens of millions of Russians were killed. So they have a very complicated beef that has nothing to do with us. It dates very far back.
Long-standing beef.
Long-standing beef. And during this big conflict in the late 80s, like fall of the Berlin Wall and all of that, NATO and the EU wanted the reunification of Germany, of East and West Germany. And they wanted Germany to be part of NATO and join the West and all of this. So Russia said, fine, we will allow this, but what we want is assurance from NATO and from the US that you will not move 1 inch closer eastward towards our border. Not 1 inch. You do not go closer to our border. Stay away.
And this was back in the late 80s-ish, right, with the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Right. And then that was the assurance. We agreed. We said, okay, so again, put yourself in the position, let's say China was trying to get onto the U.S. border.
China.
Yeah, they were trying to, this is like the greatest threat to America, I would say, is probably China. So let's say that China's trying to get onto the U.S. border and they're doing it through Canada or they're doing it through Mexico. And we're saying, okay, we'll stop doing whatever we're doing. There's some conflict going on. But China's not allowed to move any closer to our border. We don't want them on our border. And then they agree. And then almost immediately, because it was almost immediate, as soon as the Clintons got in, they started going back on that. They started inching east again. And now they've completely crept. I mean, the agreement is like lighted on fire.
And you have Kamala Harris coming out a couple of years ago when she was making some sort of speech at a summit over in Europe. Again, I'm not very well versed on this, but I do recall her saying that the NATO alliance and that NATO forces would absolutely come to the defense of the Ukraine. And I think she insinuated that at some point that the Ukraine would be adopted into NATO, which of course is going to piss off your boy over in Russia. You guys probably already know by now that we are massive Daily Wire Plus fans and longtime members of their platform. That's because their platform is based in truth, not propaganda. Plus, they offer some of the best podcasts, films, documentaries, and even children's programming out there. Best part is right now it's 50% off.
Daily Wire Plus has some of the best names in conservative media and entertainment, including Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Brett Cooper, Jeremy Boring, Michael Knowles, and of course, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. In fact, Jordan Peterson's full library exists only on Daily Wire Plus, including his Mastering Life series, which is excellent for the whole family, Foundations of the West, Exodus, and now his new biblical series, The Gospels.
The Gospels is a deep dive into the life of Jesus, told through the lens of 9 men with diverse belief systems. Set in a roundtable format, the series examines whether the events of Jesus' life truly happened, why historical accuracy matters, and the profound societal significance of the Gospel's symbols and metaphors.
Yeah, think of it as a Bible study like you've never seen before, one that isn't limited to just Christians. Each participant brings unique perspectives and motivations. Some aim to revive Christian ideals in today's cultures. Others explore the broader societal implications, and some are on a deeply personal journey to wrestle with the meaning of these stories.
This series is so vital in today's society when so many are wrestling with the idea of faith and the true nature of who Jesus was as a man. Whether you're struggling on your own journey or whether you are seeking the best way to answer the questions of others, The Gospels gives you 20 hours of content to chew on.
Trust me when I tell you, Daily Wire Plus has hours and hours of content to enjoy for the entire family. And if it's something that you've been thinking about, now is the time, because for a very short time, Daily Wire Plus is running the biggest sale of the year, 50% off.
Daily Wire Plus also makes an incredible and thoughtful gift, and you can give the membership at that same 50% off rate right now by going to getdwplus.com/NWOS.
There's two different sides to this. The Ukrainians are saying, well, Russia is invading us because they don't want us to exist and they want the land. Now, Russia's saying, no, we're invading the Ukraine because there's this threat that Ukraine's going to join NATO. And that's really bad for us because if they join NATO, now they have NATO protection, which is multiple massive countries, right? It's the US and like Europe and stuff. So then
Europe,
it's a problem.
Therefore,
yeah,
and like the Iraq.
Europe. I mean, it's Germany, which has been a problem for them in the past.
Yeah, the West as we know it.
Yes. So they know if the Ukraine joins NATO, that they're going to lose that agreement completely. Now, all of a sudden, NATO, the US, whoever can set up right on their border. And that goes against the entire agreement that was made back in the late 80s, early 90s.
35 years ago, yeah.
Right. So did that cause the invasion to try to prevent that and to try to protect their border?
I guess I don't understand
we don't know.
I don't understand the escalation because, like I said, nobody stands to win here. Everybody loses if this continues to escalate. I think you were alluding to the fact that, hey, Biden is still making these decisions during this lame duck period where obviously Trump, who claims to be
being very lame
and campaigned upon making promises of trying to de-escalate all of these situations, which he caught a lot of crap for. I don't really understand that one. Remember when he came out making that statement when asked about?
Well, they called him.
He basically said that I want the dying to stop. I don't want people to die, which. Okay, fair. Shouldn't we all be supportive of that? Despite that, he, for reasons unbeknownst to me, caught a lot of crap in the process because we are supposed to apparently, I guess, just blindly support the Ukraine. Even though you go back a few years, everybody was speaking very negatively about the Ukraine, the fact that it was such an incredibly corrupt country. Even people on the left, I recall them pointing out the fact that, yeah, it's highly corrupt. There are still modern day Nazis that are kind of in control. How did all this change so rapidly?
I don't know.
The powers that be seem to be hell-bent on making sure that this war not only persists, but escalates. Well,
I have a theory. My theory is that nobody would care about the Ukraine and that nobody does truly care about the Ukraine.
Can you imagine if things play out the way that they maybe potentially will, that the world literally comes to an end over the Ukraine? Who have that on their bingo cards? Certainly not me.
Bingo. No, it's all about control and power, and it's all about
money.
It's all about, and control and monitoring Russia and everything. If Ukraine can join NATO, which they have no business being part of NATO, they really just don't even qualify. But if they can join NATO, which it's looking very much like that in the news today and yesterday, then NATO, the EU, the US can now set up camp in the Ukraine. It's just territorial. It's got nothing to do with the Ukraine or their citizens or their sovereignty. Like, give me a break. It's about control and power.
You think the provocation at this point is coming more so from our end of things? Because that's the way it sort of feels. It sort of feels like maybe we aren't necessarily doing the right thing. Again, keep in mind, I have no idea what I'm talking about here.
It seems like they have an agenda. It seems power and money driven. I don't think it's about protecting the citizens of the Ukraine at all. Like, why Ukraine? Why all of a sudden are they this like massive focus? Remember like a couple years ago when this whole thing like fired up and then Instagram's like, do you want to add the Ukrainian flag to your bio?
No.
And all these young college students started adding the Ukrainian flag to their bio, and it became very trendy to be anti-Russia.
Well, it became very political here in our country.
But it also became trendy.
There was supposed to be this blind allegiance to a country that was not ours based on the fact that they are apparently our ally in this thing.
On a conflict that has nothing to do with us. And I think this is just another example of the US and the UN playing world police and sticking our nose in things. Like I'm kind of with Candace Owens on that we should never be involved in regime changes. It's been a disaster since World War II.
Every time.
Every single time. And it goes horribly wrong. And it's none of our business to go into another country and try to change their government and overthrow regimes and try to change the way that they do things based on our ideals and what we think is fair and correct. Because maybe the citizens don't even want that.
There are people who would strongly disagree with you on that and refute what it is that you have to say. I'd love to speak to somebody who is very well versed on this conflict in particular to help me understand. I don't see the benefit here at all. And like I said, we don't like living in a state of fear, but it's definitely going to cause us in this coming year, if you watch us over on Good Simple Living, to take whatever measures it is that we can here on our end to just shore things up and make sure that we live as sustainably as possible for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're literally poking the bear right now. And so I'm a little confused as to the timing. I mean, I say I'm confused, but I'm not really confused because it does seem by design. So this is a lame duck president at this point right now. So
quack, quack.
Yeah. And the whole like lame duck saying is like, they're just supposed to be bobbing around, right?
The expression, yeah.
Yeah, they're broken. They don't swim. They don't do anything. They don't quack, quack, nothing.
You got a couple months. Leave it alone.
Bob around. And I mean, we got weekends at Bernie's over there as a president. Like, I don't think Biden is calling these shots. I don't think Biden knows what day it is. Where's Biden? Where's he been since the debate?
And why are we ramping things up prior to
who's running the country now? I mean, Kamala Harris she wasn't running the country. She wasn't making these choices because she was running a campaign. Now she's drunk in a hotel room making YouTube videos.
Separate issue.
So she's not running this. So who's calling these shots? Who's telling Ukraine, okay, now you can use these possibly World War III starting missiles. We're going to help guide them. Who's making these choices? Where's our president?
The elitists, right? The quote unquote nameless, faceless elitists. Even Putin in his speech, the warning that he provided in that video where his arms aren't moving, he's referring to his adversaries as quote unquote the elitists. Who are these people?
He's calling them the elitists. So exactly. Who's calling the shot?
And whose side are they on? What are they trying to get out of this?
I think they're on the UN side. Like,
so global elitists trying to bring about a one world, no pun intended, because I know of the NWO and all that. We catch a lot of crap for that in our name here on the podcast. But this one world government, do you think that factors into this equation whatsoever?
It seems to. And I think that they know full well that Trump is not going to do this. So it's like, hurry up. Right. We need to hurry up and do this. Trump won. They knew if Kamala won, they had another 4 years to escalate, push their agenda, do whatever they wanted to do. But with Trump, he doesn't play along.
Yeah.
So I think it's either there's two scenarios. They're either trying to sabotage the president-elect and his upcoming 4 years by starting a war, a major conflict, or they know that he won't participate in a major conflict, so they have to hurry up and do it and get their agenda across. So I don't know which it is. I don't know if it's just sabotage. It seems a little extreme to just sabotage somebody. So I've got to lean towards they had this agenda, they've worked really hard on it, and now they have to get it across the finish line before he is sworn in.
My ignorant perception and listening to him speak is that Putin is actually being relatively patient. I mean, he's referred to Trump's upcoming administration, and it almost seems as though he's trying to wait this out, which if that is the case, credit to him, I guess. There are going to be some people out there who are mad at me for saying that, but well, again, nobody wins.
Putin is under a lot of pressure, mostly from like Russian nationalists. So it's more of the right, the party of the right in Russia that's putting a lot of pressure on him of like, be strong, do something, respond. I guess we'll see. I don't know. I'm not a Putin sympathizer by any means. He scares me. He seems hot-headed. He doesn't seem very nice, but I don't know. It's not that I'm on his side, but you have to look at it. If you were a Russian citizen, you'd be like, what the heck, And
credit to the internet once again, because I think if we were just getting our information solely from the legacy media,
we wouldn't know what was going on.
Not only would nobody know what was going on, but the narrative would be so jaded. They'd be shaping the opinions of all of us because we wouldn't know what to think. If it weren't for the transparency of the internet and people like Tucker Carlson out there raising questions or having Putin on, allowing for him to speak for himself and placing a little clearer perspective on things, it's definitely led to me questioning whether or not we are operating in the right here, like I said.
Now I just saw, what's his name?
I have no idea.
Gosh, podcaster, talks really like monotone. Please, I have brain fog from cold medicine and everything else.
Did you know that American homeowners nationwide have over $32 trillion in equity, and cyber criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI is calling house stealing?
Yeah, house alarms, doorbell cameras, and deadbolts won't work against these thieves because they're not after your stuff. What they're after is your home equity.
If your home title isn't being monitored, scammers can transfer the title of your home into their name using a one-page document they file with the county. They then take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. The scariest part, you won't find out until collections or even foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox. But by then, the damage has been done, and you are left with a financial and a legal nightmare.
The best way to protect your home equity is with triple lock protection from our friends over at Home Title Lock. Triple lock protection is 24/7 monitoring, alerts of any changes, and God forbid, if the worst happens, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you.
So when was the last time that you checked on your home's title? If you were like us, the answer is never. And that's exactly what these scammers are counting on. But you can check on the status of your home's title today and make sure that you are not already a victim.
You can get a free title history report and a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection by going to HomeTitleLock.com and using our promo code NWOS, or click on the link in the description. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code NWOS. Lex Friedman?
Lex Friedman.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Winner chicken dinner.
Oh my gosh, I can't think at all right now. So Lex Friedman literally tweeted out, I'd love to sit down for 3 hours with Zelensky. And then Zelensky wrote, at Lex Friedman, let's do it. Come to Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen too. And I think that these open conversations with Zelensky and with Putin are so valuable. I mean, to have a podcaster like him sitting down and say, okay, tell me your side of the story. And then, okay, now you tell me your side of the story. It's important to have both sides. And when this whole thing erupted, literally all of the media in Russia that was on this platform and a lot of the channels that were reporting, their podcasters and everything, all of their channels were silenced, taken down.
Yeah.
If you were a channel in Russia, you were literally taken down from the platform. And it was like we were not allowed to hear their side. And it's like, when did that happen? When did that start? Even during the Cold War, there was communication.
Well, there's so much value. I mean, I guess there's value either way in that open transparency, or like I said, trying to control that narrative.
Yeah.
And thank God for Musk and the X platform for allowing that transparency to exist.
Yeah, but there's people that want to shut that down too. And I don't see why you would ever want to shut down communication. It's very healthy for the United States to be sitting down with Putin and to be sitting down with Zelensky and saying, what do you want? What do you want? What can we do to resolve this?
So here in the United States, what is it that you think everybody should at the very least be taking into consideration for themselves from a preparatory standpoint?
Well, I think we need to recognize the fact that we're not getting the full story, or even close to it, or being made aware of what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know when it became a thing to lie to the American people or to protect us like we're babies, like we're
but again,
children.
people don't even seem to care. So how do you change that?
I think that if they were getting the full story and they understood what was going on and how dangerous this conflict could become for the United States, right now it's over there.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But as North Korea is moving into Russia and China and Russia are friends, you know, they're allies, and Iran and Russia and China, like, we don't want this. This is bad.
What percentage of our population do you think even realizes that North Korea has boots on the ground in Russia?
5%.
Right on the Ukrainian border.
Nobody in the universities with the Ukrainian flags in their bio.
Again, for as little
understand.
as I do know, that part of it is so troubling to me. The fact that this could directly impact all of us in a very dire way,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that none of us, again, not to repeat myself, nobody seems to care. We're just living our lives, and I get that life is great here.
Yeah.
It is the holidays, but shouldn't we be slightly concerned? Again, not to be fearful or anything.
Good times produce weak men. It's been too good for too long. I mean, it was our grandparents that were involved in World War II. It was many of our grandparents that were involved in Vietnam, which was its own disaster. And we don't know what it's like. And we haven't had anything happen since 9/11 here. And that was 2 buildings in one city. That was not a major invasion or a major attack. I mean, or an attack on our power grid or something like that. And these are very real scenarios that people need to think about. And we can't control we don't even know who the puppet masters are. We know it's not our president. We know it's not our vice president. We don't even know who is controlling this conflict and what's ultimately going to happen tomorrow or the next day or next year. So all we can do is control our own family environment and get our own homes in order.
Here is going to be my recommendation. You know that we are real big on food storage, food prep. Again, to go back to the fact that we have this kind of homesteading background, I think skills become incredibly valuable in this case. If you don't know how to hunt, if you don't know how to grow food, maybe look into it. Again, I'm not trying to say to live in fear, but there's nothing wrong with being prepared, even just as an insurance policy, right? It doesn't have to be global war. It doesn't have to be World War III, but let's say just the grid goes down, even for a temporary period of time. It's so important to be as prepared as you possibly can be. We were having discussions amongst ourselves again over this holiday week about some of the things that we are looking forward to doing here on our property. Things like maybe expanding our garden, building a greenhouse. We're going to put in a pond. This is all stuff that we mentioned before, but that way we could stock some fish. And are these efforts going to be futile in the end? Maybe so. But either way, I don't think it's a bad idea for all of us out there, at the very least, to be aware of exactly what it is that's happening and how we can try to combat that in our own lives and protect not only ourselves and providing for ourselves, but also our children.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it kind of gives you a little peace in that moment too, of every preparation that you make, you feel a little more prepared and you feel like at least I'm doing something and we're not just sitting here waiting.
So you have food,
yep,
water, power, ideally. We also want to do some off-grid infrastructure here on the property for a lot of our buildings. If you are not somebody who is currently invested in some type of alternative power source, maybe consider that for yourself as well. Again, all things that we plan on heavily investing in ourselves in the upcoming year.
Yeah, I think we're in really good shape with water because yes, we have a well, but wells don't work if there's no power. And then we also live in North Idaho. In the summertime, if we were to put solar, people are always like, "Oh, you need wind and turbines," and no, out here that's just not going to work.
Not a big fan of wind. Unreliable.
Yeah, we don't get nearly enough wind out here.
Solar is happening for sure, though.
Yes, wind is not a viable. It's not a reasonable solution for our power needs out here.
No,
we would have to have like a field of ugly big turbines, which we're not doing. That would be very expensive and it just wouldn't work very well. So, and then hydropower and all that, like no. We get a lot of people asking why we don't catch rainwater off of our roofs, and it's because we don't have to. One, it's difficult to treat because when you have water falling from the sky, and then you have to think of a disaster scenario. In the case of some kind of a nuclear attack on like Seattle or Portland or Canada or some kind of military base, even in North Dakota, there's, nuclear bombs under the ground there. And if that base were attacked or something like that, you don't want to be drinking the rainwater that moves over the country. That could be contaminated.
It'll all be tainted.
Yeah. So getting your water from under the ground is the best. Like spring water, everything would all be contaminated. So we have a 160-foot well. That's going to be our best bet. The problem is that well pump isn't going to work without power. The other problem is we live in North Idaho. And in the summer, solar power is going to be amazing. It'll be great. In the wintertime, we'll struggle because it gets dark here at about 3:45.
Yep.
And even during the day when it's not dark, we have heavy snowfall and we have a lot of overcast days in the winter. So we've talked to quite a few people that do have solar in the area and they really do struggle. They need supplementary generators and everything. Well, generators take fuel. Fuel would run out in 2-3 days.
Really quickly, yeah.
Yeah. So unless you had diesel and you were able to store it, but you're talking about
also,
storing.
we have a hand pump on our well. That's not something we've focused on tremendously, but I do want to recommend that for any of you out there with a well. Again, you lose power. At the very least, you can pump as much water as you may need. You're not going to be like, not that this would be a concern, but you're not going to be like washing your car. But if you need to take a shower or a bath, or you just need some drinking water, hand pump is a fantastic option to be invested in.
Jack and Jill.
Old school.
Yeah, like seriously, just
manpower never lets you down.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the water comes out and you can get gallons and gallons and gallons of it. And then wood stoves are really great for heat. You have to have heat if you live in a cold climate. A wood stove is going to give you the ability to not only sterilize water, but you're going to be able to cook on top of it and you're going to be able to heat your entire home with wood, which is highly sustainable. We got a lot of crap for that on the last video too. And we were talking about building a woodshed. People are like, no, the ozone, don't burn wood. Burning wood is highly sustainable when you live in the forest. You will never run out of fuel.
Yep. That's the reason we have our big giant wood stove. Also, I don't want to go there, but not everyone's a fan of this, but the pew-pews. If you are not a fan, so be it. But you may want to, I would encourage you to maybe familiarize yourself with those weapons platforms and again, maybe making investments. I'm not trying to be a fearmonger here by any means. Again, this is all about just being as prepared as you possibly can be to protect yourself and your family. I wanted to ask you about like a faith component in this too, since we were talking about like end of times type of weaponry that is potentially going to be fired here. Where do you come at this from a faith standpoint? Because there are a lot of people who shrug all of these very horrific hypothetical situations and say, hey, it's in God's hands. It's God's will. Let it play out however it's going to play out, and put your trust in Him to keep not only yourself, but your family safe. This holiday season, we invite you to share your blessings with children who have a mom or dad in prison and who might not have a Christmas this year without your help today. It is truly our honor to be partnering with a nonprofit, Prison Fellowship, to help bless these kids through the Angel Tree Christmas program. The cost to reach one child through Angel Tree is just $30, and for that, a little boy or girl receives a special Christmas gift, a note from his or her parent, and a Bible.
Prison Fellowship really is such a beautiful organization that my father used to volunteer for when we lived over in the Seattle area. And every year my parents would bring us to the mall and we would select an angel off the tree to buy a gift for the Angel Tree program. This was so impactful for us in our lives, and even more so in the lives of the children that were being blessed. And now each of you can also bless a child as well.
Through your generosity, Angel Tree helps show the love of Jesus all year long to children with a parent in prison. Just text GIFT to 717767 and we'll send you back a link where you can easily donate. Or you can phone your generous gift to 888-206-2802 or simply click the link down in our description below to give online.
This really is the most blessed season of the year, and thanks to you, it will be special for a boy or girl who will receive a gift, a personal note from his or her parent, and a Bible, all through Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree program.
I think it's a naive way to look at things because I don't think that God intervenes in everything. I mean, look at what happened in World War II. Look at the millions and millions of people that were killed because they either didn't flee when they had enough time to flee, or they didn't have the ability to, and they had no way of protecting themselves. And I mean, there are conflicts from the beginning of time, from biblical times, where God gave warnings to the Israeli people to flee for the hills. First, it was get your homes in order, and then it was flee to the mountains. And those that did not flee, that did not run and take their families, had a hook stuck through their cheek and were led into 500 years of slavery. So we are to protect ourselves and our families, and our responsibility is to do so. And God isn't going to intervene in everyone's home because, like, oh, this is a Christian family. This is not the Passover. Like, he's not going to be like, oh, if something happens with China or Russia down the road, but this is a Christian family, their home will be untouched because they're praying. That's just unfortunately not the way that things work.
And there's a lot of potential for suffering in the meantime. And I guess for myself, that's kind of where I go with it. You do hope that God provides and protects and watches over you and your family. But if it requires that you endure potentially years of suffering in the process, why not just do what you can to make that period of time as best as possible?
And also, I just think it's naive to think that he will intervene in every single situation, because there were a lot of good Christian, God-fearing, faithful people that were killed in all kinds of conflicts throughout the world. I mean, Christians were persecuted in Europe. You know, that's why America exists, is because of Christian persecution and the persecution of the church. And God did not intervene in those families. People were tortured. They lost their lives by the millions. And it is our responsibility to protect our own family. It is the time that men need to rise up and learn how to use what we have. Because if you prepare a bunch of food and you have a bunch of, the good survival stuff, the food, the water, the board games, the books, seriously, that's part of it. You got to be entertained. If you have this wonderful sanctuary, there's going to be other people out there that are not prepared that are going to come take it.
Yeah. Because
when times are desperate and they have families and mouths to feed, they will do anything to protect their families. And they're not going to go, well, I didn't prepare and my neighbor did, therefore I guess my children are going to starve to death while my neighbor's kids are having beans and rice.
I think that may end up being the worst part of it, honestly, for those who survive that initial attack, to see neighbor turn on neighbor.
Yeah.
Such a horrific scenario. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a part, at least a very small part, maybe not even that big, maybe not even that small of a part of our motivation to flee a metropolitan area and come to an area that we felt was more suitable for sustaining ourselves in one of these awful scenarios.
Yeah, there's a lot of safety in having a prepared community also, because when everybody's prepared, then it's not this desperate state of like, oh, let's go take from our neighbors. It's more neighbors that are able to work together, and there's so much peace and strength in that.
How about this conflict? There's a cough. It took a half an hour.
Sorry.
You okay? This will all be edited out.
Please mute.
Doing better?
I snotted on my shirt.
Disgusting.
It was like...
Sorry about that. We will clean that up as best as possible. Melissa's having a coughing spat over here. It's been a long, rough last couple of days.
Yeah. Medicine's another thing.
Speaking of.
You should have. There's some great resources online for emergency medical. Huge. You need it.
Oh, and trauma kits. Again, This is something that we've kind of pushed and promoted in the past. Huge proponent of you, again, being as prepared as you can, not only medically with medications, but also have your tourniquets, have your iodine, have your, name it. There are a lot of great
antibiotics
products and companies, antibiotics, stock up on whatever it is you can get your hands on and hold on to it preciously.
And I know they always say to throw that stuff away.
Do not.
I don't throw it away because the only thing that happens is it loses its effectiveness,
right.
But it takes a really long time. And when you're talking about even a sick animal or something that you're depending on, like let's say you have a cow and you need that beef and it gets sick, like, so what if you've got some old antibiotics from your wisdom tooth removal, like give it to the cow.
You know what factored into this discussion for us over the Thanksgiving holiday is the fact that
we're crazy.
There's that for sure. Also, we were binging the TV show Lost.
Oh yeah.
And it had Melissa and I looking at each other like we need to do more here. Not that we aren't as prepared as we possibly can be at the moment, but you can always do better.
No, we could do way better.
We could do way better, which is why, like I said, if you are a fan of the good simple living side of things in the coming year, be prepared to be prepared. Be prepared for some preparation because it's going down. We are going to make the necessary investments to, like I said, just shore things up around here.
Yeah, and while I hope like the current bubblings around the world sizzles down and we all get more time and everything, which I do think God will intervene in. I'm hopeful that He will. It is just another reminder of like, okay, let's look at everything that we have here. Like, let's pull it all out. Let's figure out what we need. I mean, I think at the very least, every family should have a bug out plan and a bug out bag. Like you see that in a lot of the movies, like grab the bag. And
or
it's
a bug in plan.
Yeah. And then you should have a bug in plan with a lot of food, and you need a source of clean water and you need a way of cleaning that water. And then you need a heat/cooking source. That's like step one.
Here's what I'm going to say. If you think that we are sounding crazy here, first of all, yes. Second of all, this doesn't last forever. These good times that we are all getting to experience, all of this peace, if you're here in the U.S., relative peace and prosperity, whether it's today, tomorrow, 10 or 50 years from now, eventually things go to crap. To the extent, I don't know what the extent of that's going to be, but you should always, maybe not always. For me, I always tend to think worst case scenario. Maybe this is an old habit from my law enforcement days, but you want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right? So like you said, I hope that all of this dwindles down over time, especially with President Trump being sworn in once again. My hope is that there is some follow through and he is effective in suppressing all of these conflicts. But eventually, things will go to crap.
Yeah.
And when they do, you will be thanking God that you took the necessary steps to keep yourself as comfortable as possible.
Yeah. And it could be something that's totally outside of the U.S. control or doing as well. It could be just another country. It could be Iran doing something crazy. And then all of a sudden, now the whole world's involved. So it's just, we just don't have control over what's going on in the world. We can control what we do within our own home, and we can be as prepared as we possibly can. And that doesn't have to be all at once because preparations are expensive. So
extremely.
So we've done pretty well with food and water and heat and a cooking source and protection. But and like some skills, hunting skills and processing our own animals and raising rabbits. And we know how to do those things.
It's all practice. For us, it's kind of always been the case that this is just soft practice for us.
Yeah. But now I feel like we need to focus on power. So we'd love to talk about doing like full solar for the property.
Yeah. Let me ask for some recommendations out there in that regard as well, because we do our best to try to keep up with all of the technological advances in the world of solar arrays and batteries and all that. But if any of you out there have any recommendations for us and what it is that we should be looking into, please leave them down in the comments. We would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. For a climate that gets dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Keep that in mind. Last little question for you here. Let me ask you to put your psychic hat on. What do you think happens with all of this? We have to make it until January 20th. Not that Trump is a savior. He is a man. He is highly flawed, like we've gone our way to point out before. But it seemed like upon his election, things were moving in the right direction with, peace talks and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, during this lame duck session, like you said, things are ramping up once again with Biden signing off and providing the Ukraine. Biden signing off and providing Ukraine with all this weaponry. And the tensions seem to be escalating. What do you think happens in this coming year for all of us here? Totally speculative on your part, but what do you think? Some say our nation is one disaster away from falling apart as a society. In a post-apocalyptic America, would you be ready? Should you forge community? Could you find hope?
Angel Studios has consistently produced quality, value-based programming that is equal parts entertaining and thoughtful. This Christmas, they are doing it again with the action-packed family survival film Homestead, opening exclusively in theaters December 20th.
Based on the best-selling book series Black Autumn, Homestead centers on an ex-Green Beret who, after a sudden societal collapse, takes a head security job at a well-known survivalist, expansive, fortified compound. It's not long before ideologies clash and the two struggle to gain the allegiance of those living on the homestead while battling outside forces seeking to take it over.
What's genuinely unique about this film experience is that immediately following the release, the story is actually going to continue as Homestead, which is a TV series on the Angel Studio app.
With this continuation of the story comes new characters, new threats, and new efforts to survive. This will be a cinematic experience like no other that will continue even after the credits roll.
You don't want to miss Homestead. Catch it opening weekend and immerse yourself in an edge-of-your-seat action that is equally thrilling and inspiring. Just use the link down in our description below to reserve your tickets now. The more tickets pre-sold, the more screens the film will play on, and this is the kind of meaningful entertainment that our fractured nation could really use right now.
You can check out a special link down in our show notes where you can not only purchase tickets, but have a chance of winning a $300,000 instant Homestead giveaway, which includes a tiny house, generator, Polaris side-by-side, and more. You can also visit homestead.tv to learn more about the expanding Homestead film and television universe.
What I'm seeing on the news today is that Zelensky is saying we will temporarily give up some of the land that Russia wants in exchange for joining NATO and having NATO protection. Mm-hmm. And then people are all mad that Russia's like that's not a concession. That's not giving us anything we want. That's actually going in the wrong direction.
That's you getting exactly what you want.
Yeah. But then to the world, they're like, no, because the Ukraine's saying that they'll give this up. This is their concession. But I mean, it's a temporary concession. It's kind of like you and your friend are fighting over a toy and you say, fine, you can hold the toy and I'm going to go get all my friends and we'll be right back. Because all that's going to happen is he's going to come back with all his friends and they're going to take that damn toy back and there's going to be nothing you could do about it.
Is that where you see this going?
I think that seems to be the offer that's being presented right now. And again, I'm not on Team Russia, but if I were Russian, that's how I would look at it. I would be like, wait a minute, you're going to temporarily give something up, but then you get to join NATO and now you're a NATO country. So if we ever attack you again, NATO comes down on us and then they own this territory, you're a NATO country, they can move in all their NATO forces right on the dang border that you promised to never be on. I don't think that this current deal is going to make Russia very happy. If anything, I think it's just going to tick them off.
It's not good. I hope something changes rapidly. I hope Trump is able to follow through and carry out, his promises of at least pursuing peace throughout the world.
I hope so. I hope that the conversations open up. I hope that they can come to a resolution like, okay, Russia, stop invading Ukraine and we will not put. I mean, that seems like such an easy solution, but maybe it's too simple. Like, okay, we won't put NATO in the Ukraine. We won't move any closer to your border. We'll stick to the original agreement from 1989 or whatever it was. And you stop invading Ukraine. Everybody stops dying. Stop fighting. Stop it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, this is us just talking. We are not experts by any means.
That's
just
like the mom solution. This is like I have 2 kids fighting over something.
You guys hug right now.
That's enough. You stop going in his room.
You go in that corner.
And he's not going to go in your room anymore. He's not going to get close to your door, okay?
It's fun to joke about this stuff. But again, I guess just our bigger concern is doing what we can on our end of things and just being as prepared as possible. And American people, come on, let's wake up here. Let's be aware. And again, we are not experts. This is where I was going when I was saying, hey, we don't.
I have mom logic.
We're not well versed on any of this stuff.
I'm fixing the world with mom logic.
But I think there is very reasonable cause for concern. And if anyone out there knows of somebody who would be willing to speak to us here on our Small Potatoes podcast about this very conflict, somebody who'd maybe be considered an expert.
Zelensky, please come do a 3-hour podcast.
No, I'm not saying that, but I just love for somebody to put it in terms and just explain it to me. Explain to me why it is that I feel the way that I do just in consuming the media that I choose to take in. It doesn't really add up or make a whole lot of sense to me, especially when we're talking about like worldwide obliteration. I mean, weapons that are beyond our grasp.
Yeah, I honestly think Tucker Carlson, he had on, I forgot his name, but he had on somebody who just knew so much about the history and the conflict and how it started and what it looks like for each side and what each side is thinking. And it was so, so good. So like, if you're really curious about knowing what's going on, Tucker Carlson just did a really great podcast on it. Candace Owens has been talking about it a lot too, but she takes a much harsher stance, and a lot of people are like, she knows nothing about it. Don't listen to her. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know if any of us totally have our finger on the pulse of exactly what's happening there. So again, if any of you out there know of somebody who'd be willing to speak to us here in our tiny little podcast, we'd appreciate it, because I think that'd make for a really interesting conversation. I'd love for somebody to educate me on exactly what's going on there, what the concern should be, or whether or not we are just completely off base in this entire thing.
Well, just because of we're Americans, our tax dollars are going to fund all of this.
Unfortunately.
And our country and our lives and our children's lives are on the line, and their history, their future. And the possibility, there's been talks of like enacting a draft, women being drafted, all of these things. And that's horrifying to an American parent.
Yeah.
Because we don't want our sons and daughters going over to some other country for a conflict that we don't understand and that we honestly feel like is none of our business.
No doubt.
So it just is really, we'd love to understand it more. And in the meantime, with all of us here struggling and trying to understand this, all we can really do is try to protect our own families and be as prepared as possible. So I think we're going to do a lot of praying about the immediate future, and we're going to do a lot of planning for the year ahead. It's going to be a really interesting year on Good Simple Living, because now that we have the house and we've got Nevaeh set up here, and we need to start thinking about how do we make this land the homestead that no matter where they go, make it back to the homestead.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time to start executing that vision that we had many years ago. We are as established as we can be to this point. And I think we've done a good job of that, but it's time to start thinking broader.
Yeah. It's not about like building different structures or buying more land and starting to build over there. And it's not about like that kind of stuff right now. It's about turning the property that we had this vision for all these years ago into this sanctuary compound, whatever you want to call it, that we've envisioned.
Yeah.
So sure. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very interesting. And we're going to do a lot of learning.
Scary times.
Yeah.
That was a dire episode of a podcast, Mama. You want to end it?
It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be. Like, I don't think that you need to be. It's scary when you start thinking of all this stuff, but there's been so many scary events from the past that have gotten us all riled up. I remember being all riled up about all kinds of different things, the economic collapse, COVID when it first came out. We didn't know what that was. I mean, I literally thought that was going to be like outbreak when it started. I thought there were going to be monkeys. There were going to be the people in the suits. Like,
also something to be aware of, right?
Right.
You can't allow for that fear to take over and lead you to make irrational decisions that will sacrifice your long-term liberty and security. We cannot do it.
You can't be led by fear.
Be tempered in your fear.
But at the same time, don't become complacent once it blows over. So as soon as COVID blew over, everyone became very asleep again in this house of cards that we all sleep in this. It's a very fragile system. It could be a pandemic. It could be a war. It could be a power grid goes out. It could be a flare from space and it's no one's fault. Yeah. You just never know. And we live in very fragile times. It could change in a blink of an eye. And so it's so easy we were lulled back into false security after COVID.
Complacency.
I think, everyone was really like, all right, we're going to be prepared. We're going to get food. We're going to have medicine. We're going to lock down, nobody in or out. And then now everyone's just back to their normal lives. Like nothing happened. Do you have more than a couple days of food in your home? Do you have a water source? If there was some massive black plague or something, would you need to leave? Or could you lock down, truly lock down? And you need the ability to do both. So
start planning now. Scary times. Scary times are ahead at some point when, I don't know.
Maybe not even in our lifetime, but maybe we can prepare our children, or maybe we can prepare our grandchildren, or maybe they just say grandma and grandpa were out of their gourds. They were.
Maybe the Matrix takes over and we're all plugged in, not even worried about it.
And it just doesn't even matter. They just give us our antibiotics for our little...
Well, there you go. We are crazy people. You all know that. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a...
It's always been this way. It's not new.
Too much of a downer for you guys. Let's end it with something upbeat. What do you got? Come on, something positive. Happy and upbeat.
We're going to be feeling better this week. We got a new baby. I don't know. I mean, we have a lot to look forward to. And I think that's why we are thinking the way that we're thinking, because when you have a lot to lose, you have a lot to protect, you have a lot to think about. It's a good thing, but it's a scary thing.
And to piggyback off of our episode last week, let's not remember that no matter how bad things get,
it could always be worse. That's never very reassuring to me. I sort of hate that.
I wasn't going to say it could always be worse.
It could always be worse. We could always be lit on fire.
There's always something to remain grateful for, no matter the circumstance. So we'll leave it on that. How's that for an upbeat positive?
I love it.
All right. Love and appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being here once again. Before we take off, don't forget to maybe comment, like, subscribe, notification bell. We will see you guys here next week on New World Old Soul. Until then, you take care. God bless.
Living in the new world with an whole soul.